Hey everybody, it's Eric from epautos.com, your libertarian car guy. Doing a quick walk around of the 2021 Acura TLX, which is Acura's latest model. And interestingly and boldly and good for Acura, they have decided not to give up on the sedan. So many car companies are no longer producing cars at all. All they're producing are crossovers. More about that later. I've got an article on deck about that. But at any rate, we have the new TLX, which some will look at and say, wow, that looks a lot like an Accord, which Honda is also still continuing to build. And there are some similarities. However, there are also a number of key differences, including the fact that this thing comes standard with a considerably more powerful engine. It's 272 horsepower version of the 2-liter 4. You can get a 2-liter turbo 4 in the Accord, but it only makes 252 horsepower, so significant horsepower bump if you move up to the Acura. And there's something else that's available in the TLX that is not available in the more proletarian badged Honda Accord, and that of course is Acura's super handling all-wheel drive system. And the reason they call it super handling is it's not just front to rear, it's also side to side, and they were one of the first to develop that along with Subaru, and it gives, in addition to a traction advantage in a straight line, a handling advantage when you're going around the curves. And I'll say something about this TLX, which Acura may or may not appreciate, because it's both a criticism and a compliment. The suspension of this car is extremely capable. The all-wheel drive system enhances that capability, but it's a little bit let down by its tires. If you really wick this thing up in the curves, you'll find the tires start to squeal long before the body starts to roll. In fact, there was almost no body roll that I could detect while whipping it up and down one of my favorite impromptu informal test roads. And I'm not sure whether the tires this particular one came with are the only tires that are available. I'll have to check the press materials and see. They may or may not be summer tires. I'm not sure. But in any event, I think if you put a more aggressive set of tires on this thing, you'd have a really phenomenal handling car. And above all else, you won't be driving yet another crossover SUV. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but gee, it's nice to have a car for once, and it's nice to have something more to say about it than, oh well, this one's got a larger touch screen than that one, and this one's got third row seating, while that one's only got 2 rows of seating. And by the way, this is, I think, the best angle of the car. This is the front, where Acura has done a really nice job of this with this thing. It's not kabuki face, as I snarkily sometimes call some of the styling in air finger quotes applied to newer vehicles. It's really over the top as a way to sort of compensate for the general blandness of the rest of the design. This is a really, it's a nice, fresh, modern, crisp looking look, but it's not ridiculous. It's not fire breathing over the top. And that's subjective. Your mileage may vary, but I think Acura does a very good job with the styling, with making it tasteful without being obstreperous. Let's have a look at the interior before I conclude this little rant o' mine. Of course, being an Acura, you get a more upscale interior. You get more sophisticated technology. That's long been one of Acura's major selling points. They have a mouse-type input here, which you can use to trackpad through the LCD touchscreen up there. However, a lot of the secondary controls are still manual push button, which me being a Gen X Luddite prefers, but the younger demographic that Acura is trying to hit with this thing probably will like that. Also, you can see the push button gear selector system. Rather than having some kind of a toggle or a handle, you just push the buttons for park, reverse, neutral, drive, and sport, and so on. And again, that's, it's a subjective. Whether you prefer that kind of interface or not is something you'll have to decide for yourself. But this is a pretty neat car, and it's pretty attractively priced relative to some of the others in the class, and that's you, BMW and Mercedes, whose cars I also like, but man, they've gotten expensive. This thing is a lot more reasonably priced, and the power, by the way, is pretty competitive with some pricier vehicles in the segment. Close to 300 horsepower versus more like 250-ish in some of the other cars in this class. So that's pretty good. I will say that I missed the V6, and again, Acura is probably not going to be happy with me for saying that, but I say it in a sort of a wistful way, in that Acura/Honda made some of the best V6 engines ever made. And I got to drive those back in the 90s, and they were just wonderful, particularly with the manual transmission, which is something else that you can't get, unfortunately, in the TLX, just as you can't get manuals anymore in so many cars. This thing would be so much more fun and so much more engaging with the stick, but for a variety of reasons, which those of you who read my columns will already be familiar with, it's getting very, very difficult for a car company to offer a manual transmission in its vehicles. And that's the chief reason why they're not available. It's not so much declining interest, though that's part of it, but the declining interest relates to the fact that they're just not around anymore, and so many people never learn to drive a stick. They don't become familiar with a stick. Therefore, they don't really know what they're missing, and it's all kind of sad. Anyway, I'll have more up about this up at epautos.com, the web's best libertarian gearhead site. There's also an article about driver's licenses and how they really aren't about driving that you might find interesting. And thanks as always for listening to the rants and reading the articles and supporting us, and we will have more for you again soon.